Look for that. Because a lot of these birds are going to eat the flesh of these armies, all the dead people. They're going to eat them. The communistic threat will cease forever once Russia is defeated. There's no more communism after this. It's gone. Russia's done. She's over when God's finished with her. The Bible tells us in Ezekiel 39, verses 11 through 15, that after this is done, it's going to take 7 months will be spent burying the dead. 7 months will be spent burying the dead from this destruction. 7 years will be spent in burying the weapons of war, according to Ezekiel 39, verses 9 and 10. That's a lot of years. All right, so while this is going on, okay, you're going to see the martyrdom of the 2 witnesses in Revelation chapter 11, verse 7. After this event, then you're going to see those 2 witnesses that God is using, those 144,000 witnesses, but there's going to be 2 of them. The 2 witnesses in Revelation chapter 11, verse 8 will be killed by the Antichrist. The one world dictator. He's going to be mad enough that that Russia and all his armies are dead. So he's going to say, okay, well, I better get rid of these 2 guys. And so he kills them in Revelation chapter 11, verse 7. And then you're going to see after that the martyrdom of the 144,000. Remember those 144,000? They're going to be preaching the gospel during that time. Well, the Antichrist, he's going to martyr them too. He's going to get rid of them according to Revelation chapter 14, verses 1 through 5. What really is interesting, look at Revelation chapter 12. In Revelation chapter 12, in Revelation chapter 12, you're going to see the casting out, what the Bible says, heaven's monster. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, and another sign appeared in the heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, out in labor and in pain to give birth, okay? There's going to be a great dragon, verse 3. A fiery red dragon having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head. All the way down to verse number, at the end of the chapter, you'll see this great dragon that's mentioned, verses 3 through 15. I want you to notice the identity of this dragon. He's pinned down by no less than 4 titles given to him. Watch the titles of this red dragon. Number 1, verse 3, he's called the Great Red Dragon, right? Notice verse 9, he's called the Old Serpent. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan. He's called the old serpent, he's called the devil in Revelation 12:9, he's called Satan also. So this great red dragon is going to be Satan himself. I want you to notice his location. Satan, notice his location. Satan has been, is now, or shall be in one of the following locations. Notice the locations of Satan. Number 1, in heaven as God's anointed angel. That was his past location. In Ezekiel, we don't have time to go there. In Ezekiel chapter 28, in verse 14, he is known as God's anointed, created angel. He was the most beautiful, smartest archangel in the entire planet. And then he transgressed against God, and God kicked him out. That was his past location. Now, in heaven, he was also God's chief in heaven as God's chief enemy. That's his present location. In Job chapter 1 and also in Job chapter 2, you can see Satan's heavily influence on one man and what he did to Job. On earth, see, Satan right now is working on earth, working in the lives and the affairs of individuals. When he comes to earth during the tribulation period, the Antichrist is going to be his spiritual guide, the true location. Satan's going to influence the one world dictator. And he's going to have him in his hand, and he's going to use this man to do his evil work. So right now, Satan is the chief enemy of God and also of mankind. But then in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 2, one day he's going to be put into the bottomless pit. That's his future location. Revelation chapter 20 will tell you that. And he'll be put into the bottomless pit during the millennial reign. We're going to get to that preaching message in the future, near future here. All right, during the millennial reign, he's going to be cast into that bottomless pit for 1,000 years. But then, after that, again, he's going to be loosed after the millennial reign in Revelation chapter 20, verse 8 and 9, to do his work again. When I get to that part, I'll give you some reason why I think that's happening. And then finally, the final location of the great dragon, Satan, he'll be cast into the lake of fire for all eternity, Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10. So you can see through these locations, he's a busy being, isn't he? He's busy. And then I want you to notice the activities of this monster. Notice the activities of this monster. The Bible says in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9, he deceives all living unbelievers. That's his job. Satan is a master deceiver, and he's going to deceive the unbelievers to the point where they don't want to believe in God. He's a master at it. Notice also another activity. He accuses all the departed believers. In Revelation chapter 12 and verse 10, the Bible says Satan is our greatest accuser. He loves to go in front of the Father and accuse the believer of doing things. You know, he does that. Every time we make a mistake, every time we blow something, Satan goes right up to us, ha-ha, see so-and-so down there, God, look what happened. But see what Satan forgets? You know what he forgets? The Bible says in 1 John that Jesus Christ is our great advocate. The Greek word advocate means lawyer. So every time Satan accuses, Jesus steps up and says, "Oh, Father, I died for him." God says, "Case closed. Out, Satan." He loses every time. He can accuse all he wants, but he's going to lose. Our great lawyer, Jesus Christ, stands up and says, "I died for him. His sins, past, present, and future, I've taken care of that, Father." And God says, "Good enough for me. See you, Satan." Also, he persecutes the nation of Israel. Revelation chapter 12, verse 13, he loves to persecute Israel. Every time you see Israel being attacked, every time you see somebody, a person or a nation, does not want to have anything to do with Israel and makes fun of Israel, wants to destroy Israel, guess who's behind that? Satan. He persecutes the nation of Israel. He wants desperately to conquer those people in that land. But I want you to notice something real interesting in chapter 17. In chapter 17, verses 1 through 18, then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked with me, saying unto me, "Come, I'll show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on the many waters." Satan is going to control and use